Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 104 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and today we're going to say we're coming from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We are shifting the gears a little bit for this episode as we are highlighting an individual who is not only involved in serving our local community over the years, but has been involved with some international work as well. And I've been wanting to start some of these discussions for a long time, and this is just the first of several more we have scheduled like this. I'm thrilled and honored to have Dr. Ellis Fisher on the podcast today and looking forward to hearing about all he has done by serving others. Ellis, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, we're going to make you talk a little bit for her first about yourself. Anything you'd like to share, and then we'll get into some specific questions about some of the service and work you've done over the years.
Well, I'm about as provincial as you can get, almost. I came here when I was 6 years of age. My dad and my four brothers and my mom, we moved here from Charleston. My dad was Southern Railway, and my parents lived in 11 different places, but this is the only place that I really remember because they moved away the day after I graduated from Ashley High School. So I'm a local product, local schools, public schools, and then the only time I went away was the 12 years it took me to prepare for my career, and I was I'm a strange person. I went to Duke and then got a degree, and then went to Carolina and did the rest of my medical training. So
That might come up again, just for
but I apologize for that. But
for the second part, right?
but to come back to the town you grew up in is just special, and pediatrics is an amazing specialty, and most now taken over by one of the great things that's happened in medicine. That's women. You know, I had 3 women in my medical school class, and my son had the majority of his class.
Yeah.
So, but they're perfect for pediatrics. But you know, you get so many hugs from 4-year-olds, and you know the things that they say were just marvelous. So going to work was not really a job; it was just a fun experience. And if you practice in one place, this is the only job I ever had, except for part-time stuff when I was young. But to go into Walmart, I can rarely get through without seeing somebody that knows me, and that's a special thing. God blessed me with incredible good health. In 45 years of pediatrics, I had a lot of sneezers and wheezers. I only missed 4 days for sickness, which is
holy moly,
unbelievable. But I love Gastonia. Meg, my wife, is from South Georgia, and so we met. She was in Converse studying music, and when we met and started dating, of course, this puts me back a ways. I hitchhiked from Chapel Hill to Spartanburg multiple times. It's hard to believe.
Well, I know Dad tells us many times about him hitchhiking back to Raleigh, to NC State. Yeah,
it was a different world, and I really, in some ways, wish that all the youngsters could experience that. But we wanted to live somewhere above the Nat Belt because she was from South Georgia, so she loved the Piedmont, and coming back to Gastonia turned out to be the greatest decision we could have made, and raised our family here. But I always felt, I was called to medicine at an early age, probably because of the Gastonia Orthopedic Hospital, North Carolina Orthopedic Hospital, which is really an amazing facility built because of the persistence of some businessmen, Henry Babington and others, and so it became the first state-supported orthopedic hospital. And there, when polio was raging, and North Carolina had some terrible epidemics, and so as a youngster, we would go out there and have Bible school. I grew up at First Baptist Church, and just that's when it started tugging at my heart about a career in medicine, and so because of God's blessing, I was able to follow through with that, and then come back here to practice with no relatives here, but we grew our family. We raised them here, and it was a true blessing to us. And so, God has directed my life in so many ways, and given me a chance to give back in ways that have just been amazing. Honduras was one of the places, Haiti also. And when you go to the third world, it's just life-changing. You realize that we are so blessed. This incredible country that God gave us and blessed us mightily to become the greatest nation the world has ever known.
Right.
And that's what hurts when we see it. There are little cracks in the pavement there. It's just like people. If you deny the history of this country and try to discard it, you're making a big mistake.
Right.
There's some mighty brave people along the way that made it what it is, and so I almost went to Vietnam. I was drafted as a physician to go, but then that was in '70 when I was finishing my internship, and so I was 1 a.m. for 10 years when I came into practice. But the only regret that I wasn't able to serve my country like that, because I love America. I'm passionate about flying the flag and being proud of it. And so, but growing up in a small town, southern textile town, I'm so unknowledgeable about Gaston. I have never actually toured a textile mill, believe it or not. It's just at one time and I discovered the Lorry Mill strike when I was taking a sociology class. So some of the past I'm not as familiar with as I should be. But I was probably the worst athlete in our high school class. I used to warm your dad up as a backup catcher, and growing up in Gastonia, baseball was what it was all about.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
The Legion team came back from the World Series, runner-ups, but 5,000 people were there at the train station to meet them. Harold Stowe and all those guys.
Oh yeah.
So but to hit a baseball, if you're not a good athlete, I still have the strikeout record for the Little League Todd Field.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I doubt that, but
I had to seek. So my brother was a better athlete than I was, and so I had to pursue things in the classroom where the Lord had blessed me with some intelligence. So that allowed me to do well, and I just I love growing up here and the friendships I've made and how it's blessed our families.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning because you were part of a great class, in my opinion, of 1961 Ashley High School, which included my dad, and so again I heard a lot about that over the years. And just real quick, I guess I first met you, Ellis. I think one time Dr. Prince was gone or out of town or something, and my mom this was late 70s probably. First time I actually met you, and so I'm actually a patient first, and then of course we've gotten to be, I hope, good friends through a Rotary Club for 22 years now. I mean, I know you've been a member much longer than that, but we've got some connections there as well, and related to polio, and I had the good fortune of going to Honduras with the Rotary Club when I was president, and you're correct. It is a life-changing, event to see that and give some perspective on what we do have here, and it's all relative, but perspective is good. So you mentioned a lot of stuff already, but I want to kind of just go into the point for me was getting you on, because I'm aware, just knowing you for so many years, knowing your family, I know the impact that you've had on our community, not just professionally, because that ties in with both you, but your community work, probably most well known, at least in the local community here, with your work at Holy Angels. But I want to talk about maybe all of it. So can you what kind of prompted you? When did you? I know you mentioned here having that calling to be in medicine. When did you kind of get that calling to go service, to go more on the service side? Because there's obviously more to your professional and personal career in life than just medicine in your family.
Yeah, I think it's. Thank you, Stephen. It's that desire, as I mentioned, to give back. You receive so much. I had such great teachers in school. Helen Marvin, Senator Marvin was one of my first teachers, and was a sixth grade teacher, and and I had wonderful teachers all the way through. Some people who made a profound impact on my life. But I think, as I mentioned, when I growing up in church, and churches was always a big part of our life, and so God began to work on me in a way, that I saw about missionaries and heard those stories, and didn't know if that's what I wanted to do, but I knew at some point in time I wanted to get that experience, to go to an underserved country and in some small way help them. And I think for Honduras, it was to go out to these little villages and to have these Americans come to them, and say, well, look at these people. They've come into all this way to help us. And not that we did any great things for them, but just being there and loving on them was something very special, as you were able to experience yourself. But I think, you see, even in service clubs, the Key Club in high school, we began to, I wasn't really that good at toilet paper sales. I could sell, I would have been the world's worst salesman. Everybody were lined up, I just hated it.
So your failure in athletics and sales is what helped Gaston County have such a terrific pediatrician for so long?
Well, we could say it, that's the way it lined up. I went in another direction, but I've been reading a recent book by Dr. Paul Brand. It's an old book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. He also wrote one, In His Image. And in Dr. Brand's books, he actually spent most of his life as treating leprosy down at Carville, Louisiana. He grew up in England and in India, where his dad was a missionary. But in this book, Dr. Brand talks about the human body and all its aspects from a spiritual perspective. It is an amazing read. When you think about that. So Dr. Paul Brand, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. I would recommend it to anyone just to see the perspectives on what God has created in us. But I wanted to, I was so. I benefited so much from the community and what I received from it. There was that desire to go forward. I was in and one of those things really changed my life, Stephen. I know you're an exercise enthusiast, and I was working with the Heart Society, and Jenny Craig Watson, Tom Watson's aunt, was the director of the local society, and so the state meeting was in Winston-Salem, and the featured speaker was Dr. Kenneth Cooper, who coined the term aerobics. He is the guy. He was an overweight cardiologist in Boston, participated in the Boston Marathon when there were 220 participants. He came in 219. But he made a statement. He said, if you're an adult and you don't have an exercise program, the clock is ticking on your life. And I was 33 years old. I went home, got his books, and I've never stopped. I did some marathons, and then other things, and now cycle and swim. But I use that to try to motivate my patients and their families to commit to that aspect of it, of nutrition as well as health. Because pediatrics is all about preventive health. The immunizations that were created during the time I practiced were life-changing. As I said, it was a golden age of medicine. We went from, where you would have to take a 7-day-old baby to the cath lab to find out what their congenital heart disease was, rather than just sending them down to the ultrasound lab and get an echocardiogram, and then CTs, MRIs, all those things that revolutionized medicine. I was able to be a part of that, but I knew that, so to prevent disease, as they say, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure, and really is true in pediatrics. If you set the standard there, but for me it was like, I'm going to walk the talk. I'm going to be a part of this. So kids would say, well, I don't have time to do that. I said, well, what do you have time to do? Are you making time to do that? The other thing, of course, is faith. My faith has grown. I've had wonderful opportunities to and how that really started was when I started praying with a group of men, and I'm at First ARP, and that's just kind of grown. Had in a thing called community Bible study with men for about 25 years, and that has been a huge part of my growth. So if you merge medicine with creation and what God's given us, and then what He did through Jesus, and then that's the whole package comes together in a wonderful way. And and you want to share that. How do you share that? Well, you're obedient to what the Lord said, do unto others, you would have them do unto you. And so it just, for me, was an amazing time to move forward with that, and just the blessings that flowed through. I think in my latter years of practice, more and more I would pray with patients, which profoundly changed those relationships, And most of those people, we had a chance to people writing a book at the end of my practice years, and the ones that responded, for the most part, the ones that said, those experiences of having my doctor pray with me, realized that he was a believer, that he would, that he knew that God was doing the healing, and my role in that is just not to mess up. The human body is just amazing what God has created and how it can heal itself, but sometimes we can assist in some ways.
So I heard multiple things there. The one that I really liked that I heard was your walking the walk, right? And it's kind of like, how can I put this? You want to go to a marriage counselor who's been divorced 5 times. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but yeah, I agree with that. I think, and I also think that, so you were 33 when you heard that. I didn't really get serious, unfortunately, I got involved with this group called F3, which if any podcast listeners go back, there's multiple episodes. There's one episode only about F3 that we've had. I wish I knew what episode that was off the top of my head, but I was 43 when I got involved. I had been, I was an athlete and I had done stuff on and off, but for the last, just 10 years now, yikes, that's when I really got, serious and consistent about it. But I do think that's important, to especially when you're advising patients, right, on what well, it's really patients and families, right?
Yeah, I had one patient. I'd worked on him. His dad was a runner. His family was active. They played sports and tennis and stuff, and he just couldn't do that. Well, he got into college, and something, a fire was ignited. This guy he became a marathon runner.
Oh, wow, yeah.
He ended up getting a doctorate in, I think, mathematics, but, so he was a smart guy too, but he finally became wise as far as his health was concerned. So and that always, when people would tell me that, because you never know about, you give advice, but
right.
You can tell who's engaged and who's not.
Or when it might trigger.
Yeah, just like.
Might be later.
Words that I used that made a difference, or was my words at all, and that's why you'd always be careful. And also, people will tell me, you told me this one time. I told you that. Really?
Yeah.
So, medicine has a great opportunity, because people, are very kind to physicians for the most part, and we receive a level of support and admiration.
Well, you're a voice of authority.
And deserved, undeserved,
right.
both sides. But it was people will come up to me and say, "Well, you saved my life." Well, I really didn't, but they were nice enough to say that. God's the one who saved your life. Because I had a patient of mine who had meningitis, and if I mentioned her name, you would know it. But she was 10 months of age, developed acute bacterial meningitis, which is devastating. I mean, you could not only has about a 50% mortality rate, but it can leave you deaf, retarded, developmentally handicapped. And she turned out to be her valedictorian high school class. We went to some university in Chapel Hill. I've forgotten the name of it.
That's that's the word we don't mention on this podcast.
But that disease is preventable now. And the people who are anti-vaccine have never seen that, so they don't really appreciate.
They don't have a reference.
What the vaccine is.
Well, so many things like that until you have a personal experience.
Yeah.
You just that's to so many things I've learned. Of course, I'm old enough now to just learn that sometimes events have to happen, right? Or you have to know personal knowledge sometimes to accept new information or change your mind about something or realize that maybe Ellis was right about that many years ago.
Yeah, you plant those seeds, and we all receive those in life, and sometimes they take root and bear fruit.
Tell us what led you to this Holy Angels involvement, because that has been a big part of what I know of you the last however many years. So what led to that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Kevin Soden was the medical director, and Kevin was like a rock star. I mean, he was on television, had a TV program at Channel 3, and he was Belmont Abbey's physician, and he was Holy Angels' physician. And so Sister Patrice, who founded Holy Angels, called me one day, and I'd been in practice about 4 years, and said, I want to interview you about being our medical director. And I was shocked. I said, when I sat down, I said, well, Kevin Soden, I mean, he's just the man. I couldn't continue, I could begin to measure up to his level. And she said, well, he's a Catholic. I just don't trust those Catholic doctors. She had a great sense of humor.
That's funny.
She was such a delight. But, and we're actually one of our first patients that came up. She came to Holy Angels when I was an intern in Chapel Hill, and she just passed away this week. And but this was a family I've known for. I took care of her brothers when I was a resident in Chapel Hill. So that's a long term, and lots of those. We've had. It's been such a blessing, and God has taught me so much through that in terms of the lives, how this works. Think as you grew up, and we've got people who've been on a wheelchair bound, tube fed, everything that has to be cared for all of their life. Yet they'll smile and they'll feel pleasure, and kids were just going on to, they go on boat rides, and they were going to go to the cotton candy factory this week, and the things that the differently able, which is a great way to refer to this population, and I don't mean to sanitize it. And they're lovely people.
Sure.
Who, in my own way, I make me reflect on the blessings that I've received, and want to try to assist, but being able to have that long-term association. Dr. Beth Baumgartner is our director now. He's wonderful, and it's just done an amazing job. But Holy Angels is something special, and they've blessed me over the years in so many ways, and I even spiritually as well as physically in other ways. So it's been truly a remarkable thing. It helped me so much in my practice of medicine, having that perspective, because it's very complex to take care of a patient who can't tell you what's going on, because one of my professors said, well, the patients will tell you what's wrong with them. You just have to listen, and that listening part's become maybe not as good as it should be.
So, but to make sure our listeners heard this, we're talking about a 45, 46 plus year service to Holy Angels. Is my math correct there, roughly?
Yeah, I think it was 77.
Yeah, so it would have been late 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a great ride. I got to know Maria Mora, she was the first angel. She just passed away, and her funeral was an amazing event. People like Larry Sprinkle and the people from the Abbey were there, and it was just an amazing thing, because she truly was. One funny story Ray McKinney used to tell about her, she would often be the Grand Marshal of Belmont Parade, and she had mild dysplasia, and she had was in a wheelchair all of her life, but she wanted to call Ray, and she wanted a real hot car for the parade that year, so he brought this Corvette over there, and this thing was loaded. It had a straight shift on it, and he said, Maria, I know you like to sit up on the high seat, but you won't be able to do that. She said, yes, I will. But she was really so when you let out on the clutch on those little hills in Belmont, the car is going to jerk. And here she is. So Ray's driving with one hand, holding Maria up there on the seat with her other hand, but she loved every minute.
Oh, that's good.
It was and many other great times that she shared with the rest of us.
So I would say this typical Ellis fashion, he has deflected a lot of this to others, and I'm going to read a couple things here real quick and maybe get you to comment on some of these. So Holy Angels, okay, is obvious a big one. Rotary Club of Gastonia and Rotary in general. Multiple medical missions. I think you mentioned Honduras and Haiti. Yeah. The Heart Society, which you mentioned. I didn't know. One thing I didn't know was medical director for Gaston County Schools. Right. So Gaston County Schools, First ARP Church, and you mentioned growing up in, I think, First Baptist Church. The inaugural recipient of the Dr. C. Ellis Fisher Caring Hands, Caring Heart Award. Who is that named after?
Distinguished. They were looking around. They were shorthanded on names or something.
Distinguished Rotarian Award, multiple other medical-related and community-related awards. And I think there was there another one? Let me make sure. The inaugural Dr. C. Ellis Fisher Award from the Interagency Child Abuse Prevention Council of Gaston County.
Yeah, I had, when I came to practice, we had, North Carolina was just getting into the investigating child abuse, you know, and because it was sort of a forgotten area. Came initially out of the child medical examiner's office when they realized that young children who were being injured or dying weren't being investigated thoroughly. So I was the initial group of what we call child medical examiners, and DSS would bring children to us for physical examination to determine about abuse or neglect. So
wow.
That we started that in Chapel Hill when I was a resident, and we continued it here and I did that, had that. And we got some court appearances, of course, with, I can remember famous Judge Caldwell, and even when he was an attorney in court, I always enjoyed, Jesse had great skills that he used in the courtroom. That was a lot of fun. I actually knew his father, interestingly, his father did the first surgical procedure at Gaston Memorial Hospital.
Oh, wow.
New location, and I was the assisting. It was a repeat C-section, so I was there to drive the baby out. So that was 6 months after I started practice. We were down in a little place there next to the Temple Emmanuel on South Street, and your mother would have brought you there, son. And then the old Gaston, the day after Christmas, 1973, we moved to the current location at Caramount.
Wow.
Old Gaston Memorial, but lots of fond memories there. Yeah, we started out, the medical community here was really tiny. We underserved. I didn't realize till 10 years after I'd paid my national defense loan back that I didn't have to pay any of it back. But I tried to get back what I'd paid, and that didn't happen. Once the government has it, they keep it. But anyway, but the community has grown quite a bit. The things at Caroline have just been incredible, how it's grown, the subspecialty care, and so we're quite fortunate with the medical.
So I could go on a little bit longer, but I would make one comment. The only blemish I see is those few years that you were in Chapel Hill. That's the only blemish to an otherwise perfect record.
Well, Stephen, just between you and me, that diploma from Chapel Hill is very valuable, because when I display it on the dashboard, I can park in any handicap spot in town.
Oh, that is so good. That's Rotary worthy right there. I have to remember that one, because I think I have Health and Happiness, not this week, but I think I have it next week. So, like I said before we started recording, Ellis, you and I could talk about lots of things for a very long time. But looking back, I mean, is there, on the community service side, both international, local, Holy Angels, just everything that you've been involved with and you've inspired others to get involved. Is there something? This might be a hard question, but there's something that really stands out that you're most proud of, or anything you might could share there? I know there's so many things on the docket there.
I think it's just the general recognition that it says in Scripture, "Too much is given, much is required." And I was given so much, I didn't come, my dad had 1 year of college at Virginia Tech, and during the Depression, my mom just had a high school education. They moved around. I had 4 brothers. We moved to Gastonia in some railroad trucks. So we had meager beginnings, but the 50s were incredible time, so simple. Life was just so simple. All we thought about was Army. We had the Second World War was being relived by all of us.
Oh, yeah.
We played military all the time. We had a veteran from the European theater across the street, and he brought back some wonderful German
artifacts. Yeah.
But I think it's just the blessings that we receive. You just want to give that back. You notice how much you've gotten, and just to make a small difference in someone else's life as a result of that. It's kind of that little urging that comes on, and saying, you need to do that.
Is it fair to say that mostly to me what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of it is just your faith and spiritual. Because you've quoted scripture multiple times, and and the same way. I grew up. Well, my family's completely confused. So I grew up Presbyterian. My wife grew up Baptist, and now we're Methodist. So our kids, she's a Tar Heel. I'm a Wolfpacker. So our kids are really have no idea what's going on. But so that was some of the same urging for me as well. I mean, as I got older and realized, and of course it was my parents as well. I saw what they were doing.
Yeah, I know. Well, I jokingly say, you don't have to be a Presbyterian to go to heaven, but take a chance. Just kidding. But no, it's I grew up in the Baptist church, and we've been Presbyterian. She's been Presbyterian all of her life, but
so she won, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's been a true blessing. It's been a true blessing, and when I really began to study Scripture intently, and that was a life changer for me, along with being a member of a prayer group, and so faith occupies a huge part of my life, and that will direct you. I mean, you can't just sit on that. The Lord urges you on. He sets that fire under you, and you feel the nudging of the Holy Spirit leading you to, I need to do something. I would be walking down the hall of the hospital and seeing a total stranger weeping, and I'd want to go to her and ask her, "Are you okay?" And she would tell me, and I'd use that moment to pray with her. That's what I learned from some of my prayer buddies. You pray with people, not for them, and that was such a blessing too, that I felt so comfortable doing that because as God leads your life, He wants you to being of service. You don't earn anything from doing that. Our salvation only comes through faith, but in response to what the Lord did for us and what Jesus did on the cross, you want to serve others and glorify God in the process.
Yeah, that grace, the Methodist whole thing is the grace thing is a hard concept for me, because it does feel like our imperfect humanity thinks that we should go do task, right, and we do get some benefit from it. Frankly, I've done enough that it's okay to feel good about what you're doing, but you're right. It's we are called to do that. And so many of I'll tell you, if we went back, and I don't know how many episodes, if we went back, we hear a lot of that. And sometimes somebody was called, they heard, they listened to their faith, as opposed to, I'm sure there's been times in my life when God was talking to me and I was like, I don't think I want to hear this. Because He's telling me to go do something. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Stephen wants you to go to Africa and be a missionary. But I think that, but God speaks to us through His Scripture, and we speak to Him through our prayer. And I think that the daily devotion, listening to most of the podcasts I listen to, other than Gaston Great, is I'll be faith-based, and I usually start the day with those. So it's God has worked on my life in an amazing way. I just, and I'm 80 now, and I have no fear at all of what's ahead of me. And God has blessed me. Amazing health, as I've already referred to, and that's that could all change tomorrow, But as it is, I have those good days. I hope I can still serve God. I have a little mentee over at York Chester, which is where I went to junior high school.
I didn't even mention that one. That's on here as well, about being a mentor at York
Harvey
Chester.
Avenue, 533 West Harvey Avenue. I could walk to Central, to what was then Ray, or over to Ashley, and living in a one-bedroom house. A one-bathroom house. We didn't have 3 bedrooms, but it was just it was a special time, to grow up in, and then to see the blessings that flowed from all that. It's so true.
Well, also, to your point, I wasn't going to bring it up, but you mentioned being 80, and you're still swimming several times a week, you're biking several times a week, I got news for you. If I'm when I'm 80, if I'm able to go out and do that every day, I will be blessed as well. And that's kind of the reason I've learned this is why I'm doing it now. So hopefully, if I'm fortunate enough to have grandkids or something someday and still be able to physically do what I want to be able to do for the most part at that time. And that's a good example. So it's the example you said is obvious on the professional side and the community service side, but just your example living that way too is tells people, well, why not? I can do that too.
Well,
or should be able to, but you have to put the work in.
Well, as we said, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And if you read Dr. Brand's book at all, you'll get just an incredible, overwhelming appreciation for what this creation, what this body that He's created can do, and you want to do everything you can, like those guys rowing over there.
Oh yeah.
Just pulling ahead. You have to sort of modify as you get older. But I think that I ran until I was sure I was going to run the Boston Marathon. I went 3:45 to 3:30 to 3:22, and I said, if I get to 3:15, I can go to Boston. Well, on attempt to get to 3:15, I got to Quail Hollow, and my knee just was gone.
Really?
I couldn't move. I said, I'm done. So I moved on to other things. And when I finally realized I couldn't be running anymore, when I looked at my X-ray of my spine, and it looked like a stack of broken bricks, I said, I think I need to do impact things. So you just move on,
But the question is, what can you do, right? As opposed to just quitting.
One of my heroes, the name Satchel Paige, goes back to he played in the Negro
League pitcher.
Right, he's pitching in his 50s. He had a great quote, not really grammatically good, but he said, "How old would you be if you didn't know how old you was?" It's
that's a great point. Yeah, so much is up here.
Yeah. So
and I believe that. All right, so this has been really good, Ellis. Again, I warned Naomi beforehand. You and I, she had to call this about for the 4-hour mark. But anything else you want to share? I mean, we're going to come back and let you finish with the last word before we finish. But we got some Gaston County related questions that I'm going to make you answer since you've been here a few years. Anything else you'd like to share about anything before we kind of move on, shift gears slightly?
Gastonia has been like this stepchild over the Catawba, for too long, and we're seeing Gastonia move forward. I just want the most for our city, that we could move forward in all areas,
right?
And we could be a blessing to so many people. Make education a really stand in the foremost position where it's something that we really want. Because for me, it was. The opportunity was there. I came along at a time when, we were encouraged. But I think to make the most of our opportunities and educating our children and getting, having a society that will allow them to grow up in a healthy way and is just needs to be a priority. And I think it's growing that way. And every little motivator that I see coming along and the new trail that's being created, that allows for us to be, I love the Gaston outdoors, the whole experience is all positive things in terms of a healthy lifestyle and also from a faith perspective. Our churches continue to have to be a major factor in our community's development, which they will.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Ellis. So we're gonna shift gears slightly. And I come up with some dumb name for this round of questions every episode, but I'm going to call this the Blue Devil Tar Heel round of questions because I don't know. What's your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
I'm a black walnut, if they still have that. That's what my used to like. I maybe went back to the days of Sunrise Dairy, which actually preceded.
Oh, wow.
Tony's has been there all along, but we used to get the black walnut for some reason.
Okay. Are you Sundrop or Cheerwine person? Maybe not now, but growing up?
Well, my dad would have Sundrop at home, but he said it was to make his hair grow. He was bald-headed, so he didn't let us drink it, but I guess it would be Sundrop.
So Sundrop is the elixir for all kinds of things, huh? I probably know this. I'm going to ask you anyway. Favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County or a favorite park or something that you might do?
Yeah, cycling is still very enjoyable. I still enjoy it. We've got we could just say no cars on Saturday and Sunday morning. Yeah, the terrain's almost perfect. The hills are all doable, when I was a kid, Steve and I would get on my little one-speed 24-inch from my home on Harbor and go all the way out to Crowder's Mountain.
Oh, wow, yeah.
See about 2 cars on each direction. It was a sweet time, and so I would. I was a bike mechanic. I love to fix things. I think that's what draws into medicine. It's like fixing stuff,
right?
Fixing people. Yeah.
So I think we already know the answer to this one. I'm going to ask anyway. UNC Duke or NC State? Yeah, that silence was. Yeah. I can't believe you just asked me that.
Yeah. Well, my brother went to State, so I've always favored, even though I have.
So he's the smarter of the. He's the smarter of the family.
He was in forestry management. So yeah. So I thought at one time I might go to State, but overcame that.
Yeah. So we all know about Duke. Yeah. Okay. What is something very few people know about you? Is there anything?
Well, yeah. My dad was a small game hunter who grew up in the Depression, and I make fun of people who eat liver mush because our family was from Virginia, but my dad used to kill squirrels, and I've eaten squirrel heads before. I mean, is that gross?
Wow.
But liver mush is everything but the squeal of the pig, so they're not much better.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's a first on Gaston's great podcast.
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume you would share the one you've already shared by Paul Brand, but I'm gonna, is that if you had a book recommendation for somebody, would there be another one?
Oh, gosh.
That sounds like a great one.
Well, one of my heroes is Stonewall Jackson, and his book is Stonewall by Dr. James Robertson. It's a 900-page book with a 100-page bibliography. But Stonewall Jackson lived his life for the Lord.
Yeah, he sure did.
He would never if you said, that was a great battle, he said, the battle was to the Lord. The Lord gave us that victory. And he also, one of his other quotes is he would said, I don't fear death because I'm just as safe on this battlefield as I'm in my bed at home because the Lord knows when I'm going to die. I don't have to fear dying.
Yeah, he was interesting
his
character.
wife was from Lincolnton, his second wife.
Seems like I remember that, yeah.
He had 2 wives. They were both, his first wife was the daughter of a Presbyterian pastor who was the president of a Presbyterian college. She died in childbirth. That was in Lexington. And then his second wife was the daughter of a Presbyterian minister who was the president of Davidson. So, and she lived till 1915, I think, in Charlotte. And when she would come in the First Presbyterian Church, everybody would stand up.
Oh, wow.
4'11", little Anna.
Yeah.
The main building at Davidson was named after her father. So, yeah, but his life was pretty amazing. The South was never going to lose the war as long as he's fighting. So to get him, the Lord knew he had to be taken out. So he was going to let a Yankee do it. So to do the job right, he got a North Carolinian friendly fire at Chancellorsville.
I just read a book. It's been in the last 6 months of Gods and Generals, and it was focused on 4 Civil War characters, for lack of a better, and Stonewall Jackson was one of them. That was the most recent thing I've read about him, so it was really interesting. They went into a little detail about that too. Well, listen, I appreciate you indulging us on some of those Gaston County questions. This is a couple more questions, and we'll let you get back to something that's more productive than having to look at me. You've answered this multiple ways already, but maybe I'm going to cheat and ask you anyway. But from your perspective, because this is a question we'd like to ask and remind our listeners why. The whole point of this podcast is to talk about why Gaston County is such a great place. So, from your perspective, and maybe a general term, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
Yeah, Stephen, I think that's a great question. I think that faith has always been a big part of what's of this county. The churches are what Gaston County is about. There are lots of them here. I think the people who founded it, Scots-Irish and German and others who came from all over Europe, ended up here, and the textile industry, one industry, sort of changed the whole character of that. These people came from the mountains looking for work at a time when poverty was just overwhelming in the South. Reconstruction really lasted till probably 1950. I mean, growing up in even in the late 40s and early 50s. I mean, there was poverty everywhere. But to come out of that and see a productive community forward, moving forward with issues related to health and humanities, and it was a positive thing. And so, with our really very meager beginnings, a little crossroads on the Southern Railway back in the late 19th century, to a town of 80,000 and a county of over 200,000. Pretty amazing thing how we've gone forward. Lots of work to do ahead of us, but people who want to see things happen and make it happen. People like GSM.
Well, thank you, Ellis. I appreciate that description. Last question. I think I say this every week. It's my favorite question. So, Ellis, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Yeah, work hard. Work to the glory of the Lord, and let your fulfill your dreams as far as your service, and let always helping other people be a part of what you do every day.
So, any last words? Anything? Maybe somebody's listening out there and they're feeling that tug to do more, to get involved, whether it's a church, whether it's a community organization that they are familiar with, or they've had something happen in their family and the organization has helped them. And how would you encourage, or what would maybe the last words to encourage somebody to take that step, listen to that calling, so to speak? What can you kind of?
And I think that's the part. It's listening, and be aware of what's available. Search out your own interests, so you can match up your interests and your skills and with an area where you can serve. We never run out of opportunities. And as always, when you're in a position like that, what you get from it is going to be far more than you'll ever give, because that's the way that God sets it up in our life. In our lives, that we are the ones who we glorify Him in the things that we do, but we receive this wonderful blessing in return. So look for those, and the opportunities are there, and take advantage of them.
Well, I appreciate that's a great way to end. I appreciate that. And Ellis, I want to take a moment just to, I think you're just a good example for what is good about our community and what's good about humanity in general. And you don't even, there's probably things you don't even know as an example. I mean, I consider you a mentor of mine. Because the example you've set, especially the last 22 or 23 years that I've spent a lot of time with you through Rotary, and but in general, it's encouraging. That's why I wanted to get you on here and share a little bit of your story, and I'm sure someone's going to hear that and say, you know what, I appreciate what Dr. Fisher has done, and I'm going to go out and do something with that now. So again, I'm grateful that you took the time to be on with us, and grateful for our community is better off and has been for a very long time because of your presence and your service. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. And you did not ask me to say this, but GSM is really the standard bearer for the way a company should operate, and we've had so many opportunities to be recipients of that, and not only what the service you provide for homes and businesses, but just the way you do it and how you support community needs on many different levels. But you've made your family proud. The past generations are proud, and it's just a great thing as you guys are seen as really standard bearers of going forward. And you reached a low point with this interview today, but other than that, it's a great thing you guys are.
Again, great leadership. My experience with great leadership and humanity includes a lot of humility. So I think that's a requirement for that for genuine leadership. And so I appreciate that, Ellis. So as normal, I'm going to finish off with my own book recommendation or podcast recommendation or something in the thought for the week. And I was intentional this week, knowing who our guest was. And it's a book this is a book, a gentleman that I like and follow, Admiral William McRaven, who wrote multiple books. In fact, I think this will be the third book I've shared of his, but the most recent one I've read of his is The Hero Code. And it's basically his life lessons that he's gathered over his lifetime about how to be a better human. He's got some leadership books, but this one is more tied into just how to be a better person. And then I picked my quote on purpose as well from Richard Branson, who said, "Great things can be achieved by leading through wisdom, empathy, and integrity with no other agenda than humanity." So I think for the last, 40 minutes or so, we have heard exactly that. Someone who has been called and urged to serve himself, his family, his community, his church, in a way that is the agenda is just humanity. So I love hearing these stories, and that's another thing about some of these organizations like we're involved with, like Rotary. I get to hear these stories all the time, and so if that doesn't encourage you to get involved, this is the kind of individuals that you get to hang out with and spend time with and learn from. So I'm very grateful for that. So this has been a great episode. And as always, I want to send a thanks to our listeners who are taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. We're going to continue doing episodes and maybe have a few more just like this. Don't hesitate to contact us at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests, and you can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And as Naomi always reminds me, give us a good 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. Thanks again to Dr. Ellis Fisher for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.